It's that time again, the time of the week. It is time for Geek Speak. And today we are going to be talking about the metaverse. So, what is it? What does it mean for us? And where, yeah, I guess like how, the who, what, when, where, why of it. And so, starting off, I'll introduce myself. My name is Phelan. I work with Pip at Seymour Digital Media, focusing on search engine marketing.
And hey, everybody, I am Greg McKinnon. I work with Original 72 Creative, and we're a full service website graphic design and digital marketing firm in Vancouver.
Hi everyone, it's Rena from Little Works Indie Media here in Vancouver too.
Awesome.
And I have confirmed the live on the Facebook does have the three of us. So
Weird.
it's just in Ecamm that we don't see each other.
That is very odd because, the other times that I followed all the instructions and it's just decided this time that you guys are only going to see my face. So, that's the joys of live video, I suppose. Is
Can we blame this on the metaverse?
I'm sure we
Not
can find a
yet.
way by the end of this. We'll blame it on the metaverse.
Yeah.
So, Greg, I think you had compiled a kind of a good set of questions when we were doing the prep about just kind of starting off with the fundamental part.
Yeah, we got a rough idea of what we want to get through today. First off, being the definition of what the metaverse actually is. Now, should we just talk it out, or do you want to take a stab at what your definition of the metaverse is? Or
I don't know who the who is in that one, but I mean, Rena, if you've got a definition for it to just get started, then we can build on that and then we can go from there. Otherwise, I'm happy to jump in.
Sure. Well, how I understand it is that it's going to be social media ideas like community, and then combining that with I forgot what the word is. The virtual reality, right? That's right.
yeah,
Yeah.
the metaverse itself is the 3D, virtual
Yeah.
reality space that we'll be able to experience through headsets or augmented reality glasses or whatever it comes available. So the metaverse is that immersive 3D experience that we will be in, that will give us access to everything that is being built into the metaverse, including social stuff and everything. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I'd say, and building on that, it's also the way I kind of think of it is kind of thinking of how the World Wide Web works, where it's not necessary. It's more of a network of these things as well. So you'll have like your website or your VR world, and how you've built this world inside your own VR, and then it has ways that it connects with other systems, and there's sort of a standard. So the metaverse is more about standards that people can build on, rather than one individual owner, was kind of how it was pitched in my understanding.
So for me, my doing research and trying to figure out everything I can about the metaverse is what I've come to think is that the metaverse will be built on Web 3 technology, which Web 3 technology is a decentralized version of the internet where not one company owns any specific thing, but all data is kind of stored everywhere on multiple devices, not just on AWS or Google servers or that type of a thing. And so the metaverse, as far as I'm aware, will be further technology that will be built up on this decentralized Web 3.0 version of the internet, and everything will, like, nothing will be owned really by anybody. And it's very open source driven Web 3.0. Is that
Uh,
how you understand the process will be?
yeah, the only modification I would make to that, like, it's definitely it's just that last little part. So it's about having what they call trustless ownership, where basically it's like saying like, oh, you have this hash. So it's kind of like the world of NFTs. So it's saying like, I own this copy of this image, and you can check that by running this algorithm that says this little bit of code says I own this thing. And so it's meant to have it that everyone, like, if I the example I always go to is like an Iron Man suit. Like, I did this quest in this guy's game, and I got given an Iron Man suit that's like a special, I don't know, like the silver version of it. And so I own that silver version of it because I did this thing, and like that's something that we can all verify that, oh, you would, that there's a code that runs in the background, like in a blockchain, not necessarily Bitcoin itself, but the ledger that runs a Bitcoin, where it's like a ledger and people can check, oh, this little string of code that makes up this silver Iron Man suit does mean that you own it, because we can tell that you have this little thing. And so it's about using the blockchain and changing it from not being something that is supposed to be for money, like like an exchange of value. It's more like a use case where it's like, oh, I did a thing, and because of that thing that I did in the game, that gives me an item, and now I have this item. So no matter where I go, everyone knows that Phelan got this silver Iron Man suit because he did this thing.
Anytime blockchain comes up, my head explodes, really.
Yeah, I mean, the blockchain is basically, think of it like, like those old ledgers that people would have. And then it's just basically, there's really complicated math that everyone has to verify and run through the numbers. And then like everyone has a big abacus and they're just running through, and they just say, oh yeah, we crunched the numbers. You did own that. And that's like pretty much all the blockchain really is. There's a bunch of extra math about how that all works, but fundamentally it's just a ledger, and then everyone has a copy of the ledger. Everyone works through the math that goes, oh yeah, that guy owns that thing.
That's probably the best analogy I've ever heard.
Yeah, it's a really, the blockchain itself is really cool. I'm not a big fan of Bitcoin per se, but the underlying part of it is actually got some really cool features that, yeah. And again, this is
maybe Phelan, you have a blockchain geek speak topic in the new year.
I don't know how I can make that I don't know if we can make that very marketing friendly. I mean, there's some really cool technical concepts, but it's not really it's
outside of our group.
Yeah. But it kind of building off of that as well. Is, I think that's one of the really interesting parts that we've kind of been dancing around, is it's like interoperability is the big thing, where it's like you do things in one game, and now you go over to, I don't know, your drink times with your friends, and like you go to like the digital bar, and then you get to like have like show off that you've earned this item, and so people know, oh, okay, cool, he did, I don't know, beat Pazuzu, and so he got given the silver Iron Man suit.
Yeah, so let's get into the basics of the metaverse and what people can expect in the metaverse. So essentially, like we said, it's a 3D immersive world that you'll be able to experience through augmented reality or VR. And so basically, you will experience the metaverse, and you'll be able to go in there, and you'll be able to create and have your own avatar, and buy digital, items from other people who you're interacting with in the metaverse. And so there's gonna be like so many possibilities to put things in this space, including like games, and for businesses, you'll be able to create virtual spaces and showrooms of things that people will be able to, in this metaverse, go to and experience. So it's gonna open up a huge possibilities in the future to have this experience with users. What do you guys think of all of this and the possibilities
Yeah.
of what to come?
So I'm actually pretty excited about some aspects of this. One in particular is um, Facebook has been spending a lot of time on improving the tools for groups. And I suspect that groups will be one of the first spaces to have the tools to get into this virtual space, because we'll have the audiences built up. So it's a natural way for us to get in there. Right now, pages are a pay to play space mostly, so it's going to be a bit harder to bridge that. But groups are like a natural place. So if you can imagine how groups are in terms of they're being used to get top funnel people in, educate people into making purchases, and just having that sort of immersive space, it's going to be pretty wild because um, your target audience doesn't necessarily have to be in your location. Number one, you're going to be able to have more of a personable experience with people across the globe, and meet with them virtually, like almost like how we're doing it on Zoom, only it will feel, I think it will feel different. And I don't know about if it's going to sort of rectify the problems that people have been complaining about with Zoom fatigue and all that stuff, but I actually suspect we're going to be able to just connect with people that have the same interests as we do. And for businesses, that's going to be our target market mostly. For interest groups, it could be all sorts of other things. There could be trade shows online. Like, I mean, think about the impact on the environment. No more, um, traveling to trade shows or doing in-person demos in plants. Or like I'm thinking about one of my clients, they're always going into plants and getting to plants, like manufacturing plants. It's actually not that easy, especially in the resource sector. You've got to drive very far into small towns up north, wherever it is, to get to these spaces. So holding these kinds of meetings or demonstrations in these spaces might be so much more interesting because you're actually going to, I feel, I don't know if this is true, but from what I know about this reality and augmented reality, you could literally take a handheld device that you want to demo your software on and hand it over to somebody where they can actually receive it and experience it in some kind of weirdo way that's going to be similar to what you would do if you were going into somebody's space. Is that,
Yeah. No,
yeah.
I definitely agree with that because it definitely it just reminded me of something because we were talking about the differences between augmented reality and virtual reality.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
one of the big things was augmented reality didn't do really well on a consumer basis. So the Google Glass and the technology had a really hard time catching up with the real world with all the real problems of like a car driving by and being able to track that. And but the one space that actually has done really well with augmented reality is plants and resource extraction or factories.
Yeah.
Something because it has a set number of things that it would expect in the environment. So it actually knows what is predictable in that environment and if something is off in that environment.
That's super interesting. I never thought
Yeah.
about that, Phelan.
Yeah, it was because that's where Microsoft HoloLens did really well is that they built it for
Right.
factories so that if someone was walking by and they go, "Hey, this plate isn't where it's supposed to be," they would know right away because it would scan and be like,
Yeah.
"Oh, that's not where it's supposed to be," and it would be able to catch
Right.
things like that for them. And so this is a really controlled environment, like in industrial scale or a commercial capacity. I think is a really good use case for something like this.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking of because we don't want everything, like, I mean, it's really easy to make the connections between Zoom events and also that other kind of weird, I don't know what the platform was called, but I did go to a cocktail party that was within a space and I was an avatar, and you would move through the room to visit with different groups of people that were in different areas. And then as you did so, you would get closer to the live music, the live music spot where people would be dancing or whatever. And you could start to hear the music as you approached, and you would start to hear the conversation as you approached different groups of people. And I can't remember what that little platform is called, but you can imagine how that would shift where you would actually be moving through that space rather than watching it on a two-dimensional screen. But when we talk about the plant example, that's like something that is a little bit more difficult for the average consumer to actually envision. And I think it's those kinds of things that are really going to be. So, what you're saying is that we should look for things that are predictable and then think about how we can actually organize augmented reality for those spaces because it's easier, right?
Yeah, I definitely agree. I don't think that this is going to be a consumer first product. I just don't.
No, probably not.
I don't see the use cases as much as people like as much as Facebook would or Meta, I guess now would be promoting that part or marketing that aspect of it. I see the commercial and industrial use cases to be making a lot more sense for something that it will a make it something that is worth putting money into because you're already having an
Hmm.
investment of saving people time of not having to travel all these great distances, and
Hmm.
then b it will give the money and the incentives to actually put into the infrastructure because while Facebook or Meta has put in a lot of advertising into this and a lot of promotional materials. The budget that they have is a drop in the bucket for it right now. It
Right.
is something like $50 million, which for Facebook into new projects is basically nothing, especially if they think this is their next big play. It's
Well,
definitely,
I'm wondering if they're going to put it in the education sphere first, because I was actually just invited to beta test some new education platform integration into Facebook groups. And I'm thinking that that's going to be one space because if you're selling education products like digital education, that would be one spot that Facebook could get the user, like group owners, to pay for that. But you're right. I don't think that's enough money for them to actually get this up and going. So
yeah,
it'll be pretty,
and plus they're also fighting an uphill battle against Microsoft and Google, who have been extremely dominant within the economic space. So they would be trying to
right.
edge in on these guys who are both technically competent and have a very good foothold in relationships with a lot of economic systems. I definitely think they might go for that once they've refined it and then they can make it more
Right.
mass. But it
Yeah.
definitely, I think the way you described is probably their best bet for
I
making
think so
something that
too.
could, it's something
Yeah.
where they could make it where they're not having to have 100,000 people join it
Yeah.
all at once. They can only have a few
Yeah.
people in a high value use case, and so then
Yeah.
they iron out all of the technical kinks and then from there expand it out because they'll have refined it. So to me that would make the most sense.
That would. I never really thought of it when I was thinking about when I was thinking about this metaverse thing. I was really just thinking like, how would each of my clients be using this? How could they use it? How could they implement it? Because that's my job, marketing strategy. I do that. So that's why and I just happen to have a client that sells software to ha big business, right? And so
Yeah.
therefore I'm in that area already thinking about that area. But I never really thought about it in terms of the financial, with the financial lens at all. So just a
Yeah. Well, that and
that's interesting.
I always think of like if you're going to make a new technology, you're going to make a new space, you're going to need someone that's going
Yeah,
to pay up front in order to
yeah, yeah,
justify
for
people
sure.
putting the investment in. And so you definitely sprung an idea that I was like, oh right, they have been putting a lot of investment with using these technologies in very like prescribed spaces where there's not a lot of
Yeah,
things that go wrong, or if they do go wrong, that's the time in which people need to know that hey, that's not supposed to be doing that thing right there. And
yeah.
so that's definitely the use case that I definitely see it as well. And then yeah, because there's a lot of so there is like companies that are starting to try and build the technology to actually make your own space, but they have had a very difficult time with scaling this technology up, and so that's where
I
it's
bet.
So
So
this
is
is
it going to be? Sorry, Greg.
that's
Go
right.
ahead.
Yeah, this is one of the things that I find a little bit interesting is the how are we getting in there type of a thing. Like, so we have the internet right now, and I'm someone who designs and builds websites. Will there be some sort of technology where that will be available where people will now have to go somewhere and say, "Hey, I want my avatar created," or "Can you design and build me an avatar?" or "Can you design and build me a world?"
Don't even.
Right?
Yeah,
Is the website building going to turn into like virtual space building kind of a thing? Like who knows
that'd be
where it's going to
interesting.
be? I'm assuming it's going to be more like on your phone and you play a game and you like drag and drop. Okay, let's use this head and this body and this hair color, and like people will, the
Huh.
technology will get there, well, where people will be able to build their own. I'm assuming is more
I
the
think that
case.
would be
But
great because here's my take on avatars, okay? And I have some pretty strong feelings, especially when we first started. Everyone knows we, right? So I build an avatar because in my mind, the whole beauty of having an avatar is that it doesn't actually have to look like you. That's the
true.
beauty of it, right? So what does the Wii game do to me? As soon as I punch in my height and my weight, it took me from this tall, willowy thing and put me into a short, frumpy body, which I did not ask for. And I don't really, like that really annoys me. So I'm hoping so, because honestly, I think that's part of the fun of being in those kinds of spaces. Otherwise, I don't really want to mimic real life in that space. I want it to be real life and more interesting.
There's going to be so much metaverse catfishing. It's
Oh,
crazy.
for sure. Probably. I guess so, because I don't really think it like I'm not really one of those bad actors, but I bet I bet there's going to be tons of that. That'll be interesting to see how they deal with that. So we've got four people watching. I'm wondering if there are any questions that are coming up or any ideas
Uh,
that you guys have for how this kind of technology could be used in your business that we haven't already talked about. That would be fun. So
so
just go
Yeah,
ahead and type in.
some of the comments we've had. I'll just go
Oh, we've
through a
had comments?
couple
Oh,
yeah,
good,
from.
because I can't see them.
yeah.
Yeah,
I don't. It's
That's
a bit
good.
annoying that you can't see them. So we have one that's really
Yeah.
interesting. That's from Aaron Smith Hayes.
Oh,
Um,
Aaron. Hey, Aaron, how's it going?
and so he says, let's not forget that new games like Axis Infinity will be able to use NFT and tokens to make in
Right.
gameplay in order to add functionality to the game, which also makes sense that
yeah, we
the
haven't touched
it's
on that, but that was one of our upcoming points about how crypto work and NFTs work into this new metaverse virtual space thing.
yeah. Well, and because on the so one part when we were discussing this is that Facebook it was hoping to have a cryptocurrency that would go with it that is like think of it like in World of Warcraft where people would mine gold. Like that you would do
Hmm.
labor in order to earn gold, and that gold would then be an in-game currency that you could use to buy items. Where and so for that you can also have Facebook was looking for something similar where people could do tasks within the metaverse to earn a cryptocurrency that could be then used across all the world. So whether you're in Phelanville or Rena Land or Gregtopia, I don't know, I was trying to and
That's pretty
so
good. We'll go with that.
thanks. I mean, I was not too bad for on the spot. But yeah, it was the idea that my dollars could go. They would be valid in either three of those worlds, and so it's a way that you could do a task in one world and then be able to jump over and then want to actually buy an item from Rena, and then so it's a way that you could earn money within the system itself, and it also is still interoperable. That's the big idea.
Right. Right. So when you talk about doing labor, because I don't play games, so I don't really know this too much, but when you talk about doing labor, are you talking about doing actual labor? So for example, if I ran a group on Facebook and I had some need to have something done, I could have somebody do it and then reward them with or pay them with tokens, and
Yeah,
then they could go and use those somewhere else. So
yeah,
it's
or
real actual labor in
yeah. So
that's
like
okay.
say you
All
have a
right.
group
So
and then you have mods that you want to incentivize people that you
yeah,
want to hire them on and like look, this isn't just a volunteer service. I will give you X number of Zuck bucks that are going to be given to you once you've completed 4 hours of making sure that there's no bad actors in your group
right.
and follow these rules, and then they would get that reward for completing that task within whatever the requirements are.
So
And the
this could actually, I mean, this could be employment, technically.
Yes, that's the so it's
And then we
I
have labor laws and payment and how this is gonna open up a huge can of worms, hey?
Yes, that is definitely a bit of a Pandora's box that they would be opening for it. I would I do
Yeah.
not envy their lawyers for opening up this Pandora's box. Is all I could say. I would so yeah, the and that's again why when we kind of talked about at the very start why the fundamental parts um
Yeah.
about who owns the metaverse is such a weird issue because at the very because it's a network and then but people are building on the platform, like ultimately
Hmm.
who is it that would be responsible, and that's why Facebook is trying to get in to be the platform, like they want to run the
Right.
servers is what they've said,
Right. Right. Right.
and so
Right.
they would be ultimately responsible. I'm not no lawyer, not legal advice, but like that's where it comes across is like they want to build the platform, and then everyone builds their little worlds on top of their platform was how they
Right.
wrote it, and so it will be interesting to see how that shakes out with responsibilities and further issues with that.
Right.
We
Wow.
definitely could have had Aaron on as a guest speaker today. He seems to know
Oh,
quite a
for
bit.
sure.
Yeah,
He's
yeah,
been
he pretty
posting some good
knowledgeable.
comments here.
Yeah, I don't even know if this will fit on the screen. Yeah, there's like a big ball of text there, which is it looks really good. And yeah, he's talking about the NFTs, and so you mentioned building your own metaverse. You can build you can do it with Decentraland, where you can buy virtual land, use a program like Blender, build an entire virtual world environments you can explore. It's pretty cool stuff. Your land is actually an NFT, and you can bring NFTs in it and use it and display to sell other things. Yeah, so you can build your own. There's also a company called Improbable Worlds, which builds them. Right now, they're currently building them for the U.S. and the U.K. military as
Mm.
training
Oh, weird.
facilities.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
yeah, so that's one that there are companies that are doing it. There is also, sorry, just because I did, there is also a avatar agency that exists for celebrities. So they
Excellent.
actually have official avatars for any celebrity, and they can have them digitally be inserted into events, and it will be like the real avatar of that person that would be
Hmm.
there.
And the verified, it'll be a totally different version of verified accounts. So you wouldn't be able to, like, what happens? So I have somebody impersonating me on Instagram and I can't get that shut down. So I mean, honestly, it could be that somebody's got your avatar, take your avatar and do something with it. And how do you,
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
yeah, this
if
is
you can
just going to be
create
everything
if you
is going
can
to open
create
up.
whatever avatar you'd like to create, there's no stopping you from creating a lookalike of someone else. So
Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
this
okay,
is the
so
whole thing. Like you know how Facebook and Twitter and other profiles, social profiles, you can't pretend to be someone else, right?
Technically.
Or
yeah,
you'll get your
technically.
account shut
But
down if
no,
they complain or
Yeah, Instagram has not taken down the account that is impersonating me. They're using my photo of me and my business name with a little add-on, and
But
I
you
can't
know
get it
how Twitter
removed.
has like a verification, like they have a
Oh,
verified
yes, yes, yes.
account thing, right? And if
Yes.
you have a
Yeah.
verified account and someone else is trying to
Yeah.
impersonate you, they will. Like you're just you, right? But
I,
if you went and got verified as Rena, you would probably have more legs to make that happen. But I see a big challenge in the
Yeah.
metaverse for this type of a thing because if they don't have anything around, you know, having people not impersonate other people, it's just going to be a shit show.
yes. I mean, the only counterpoint I would have to that, I did like what you said. The only counterpoint is Salman Rushdie is not allowed on Facebook. Even though he gave them his ID, they said it wasn't good enough, and they have blocked him for it. And someone else has an impersonation of him, and they're letting that one be on Facebook, where he even gave his ID. And so,
There are
it just because they go and
definitely
verify it does
problems.
not mean that they will not screw up. They are still people.
Hmm.
They're still like complex systems. So just because there's humans and people are verifying documents does not guarantee that everything will work out smoothly.
So, just as I mentioned to you guys before we went live, we were going to go through half an hour really quick with lots to say.
Yeah. And
I did want to get in one thing. Grim Long, an old Geek Speak contributor, has been in the chat making a bunch of comments saying it's much like Second Life. I don't know Second Life, so it's sort of. Do you
yeah,
guys know Second Life? It's a
I'm
No.
familiar with it, and I've also heard it described as a Second Life copy, but with basically like jamming Second Life into an Oculus is what I'd heard it described as. I'm not super familiar with Second Life and the details there, but that was an analogy I had heard from people that were doing research
And we
about
have
the
to
metaverse.
reiterate that the metaverse is like still in its infancy.
Yeah,
There's things not built out. They're just exploring what the possibilities of the metaverse will be and stuff like that. So that was my final point to close out the topic was when do you think we can expect to really see this sort of catch on in any way?
To be honest, when we had done the prep, I was figuring there would be a pretty significant lag for it. But especially in the middle part of our conversation, we're talking about it in a commercial or an industrial capacity to iron out a lot of the kinks and put the investment in. I could see that as being something that could bring it sooner rather than later. But I am still there's a lot of technical kinks as well as I guess as we've discovered legal issues that might come up that especially as Facebook has been a bit under the microscope with that they are I don't think they can just brush these issues away. So I see it's a it's an interesting concept. There's a lot of major hurdles to iron out before we're there.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, I'd say so.
I look forward to keeping an eye on all of this and hopefully updating the group in future Geek Speaks with things that are coming up and interesting things relating to marketing and things that businesses can do in these spaces in the future.
Yeah.
Yeah, like Geek Speak Happy Hour.
Yes,
There you
exactly.
go.
On Friday, right?
Yeah, that'll be super fun once we're in the metaverse, I think.
Oh yeah,
That'll be
true.
interesting.
Looking forward to
Virtual
that.
drinking. Do you get drunk if you virtually drink?
Having tried it a
I
couple
feel
times,
like
it's not recommended. It is. It was not fun having because the lag. It was not a lot of fun.
all right, good to know.
Uh,
Okay, so what's happening next week, you guys? Do we know? I can't remember.
Oh, that's a good question. You know, typically I've always opened up the page to see because I know Pip usually puts everybody on the spot.
digital marketing, looking back and looking forward.
Retrospect. We are
All
coming to the
right.
end of
Retrospect.
the year, right? So
Doodle-doo, doodle-doo.
the next one technically is at the beginning of December. So
And
Yeah.
who's going to be hosting that? Which one? Which
good
ones?
question.
Uh,
Okay.
yeah.
I thought it was all laid
Look.
out
I got
there.
the name. That was my
Okay.
Yeah,
my contribution
All
there.
right, next
I
time I'm
pick
going to
you,
pull
Rena.
the card up. Me?
No.
Okay, let's
It
see.
might not be. I'm just putting you on the spot. You
I
should
know, right?
you should definitely do that.
I should definitely do that. Okay, where are we here? Oh, goodness. Okay. Oh, it's actually not assigned. Oh no, it's Pip and Greg. There we go.
There we
Uh,
go.
the two OGs.
Woo! Awesome. So
The two
yeah, it's gonna be an
OGs.
OG one. But yeah, we will look forward to that next week. And until that time, I've been Phelan.
Rena,
And I'm Greg. Thanks for joining,
see
everyone.
you next week.